How many years in prison would every villain from the Scooby-Doo Show get for their crimes? As usual, the ground rules are, for each crime, they get the max sentence I could find. No crimes get thrown out, and in the case of international crimes, I'll use their laws where applicable. Okay, let's go. In the series premiere, high-rise hair raiser, red sparks and gem rivets halt progress on a construction site, so they can continue their safe robbery spree, scaring away 2 construction workers and the gang, while also stealing a telescopic lens, winding up with a 21-year prison sentence. In The Fiesta Host is an Aztec Ghost, the archaeologist couple of the Stone Hacks dress up as the ghost of Katazuma and the Stone Monster to scare away people from the town, so they could continue to steal from the Aztec pyramid. They go into the hotel to try and scare the gang away, and eventually lock them up deep within the pyramid's walls, and according to Mexican law, they'll be receiving 191 years in prison. Now their career really is in ruins. In the gruesome game of the Gator Ghoul, Alice Dovely tries to take over the Finoki Fizz company by rooting their business, so she could sell it on to Cookie Cola, doing so just as the Gator Ghoul. She stalks the gang back to the factory, where she chases them around before getting caught in a sticky situation, and a 13-year prison sentence. In What a Shocking Ghost, Mr. Voltner dresses up as the 10,000 Volt Ghost to scare the residents of Winterhaven, so he and the mayor can buy the land for cheap. He breaks into a couple of places, chasing and nearly capturing the gang, and breaking a few props along the way, winding up with a shocking 24 years in prison. In The Headless Horseman of Halloween, Cousin Elwood dons the classic Headless Horseman costume in order to steal his aunt's diamond necklace and fly out of the country. He crashes the Halloween party, which, aside from being completely rude, also scares away, by my count, 9 partygoers, plus the attempt to grab Shaggy, and his eventual takeout whilst on the ladder. And this Headless Horseman narrowly escapes the guillotine this time, instead receiving 20 years in prison. In Scared a Lot in Camelot, Zarko the Magician disguises himself as Merlin the Wizard in order to steal Shaggy's uncle's treasure, kidnapping him and keeping him locked up to do so. When paired with his assault of Scooby and Shaggy, plus his false imprisonment, Zarko will have 34.5 years to work on his act some more. In the Harem Scarum Sanitarium, Officer Oldfield is the ringleader for a multi-million-dollar gold robbery, and to make matters worse, he's not even a real cop. When the gang get a little too close to cracking the case, he chases Fred and Shaggy away, eventually leading to his assault and kidnapping of Shaggy, resulting in a life sentence in Canadian prison, plus an extra 50 years on top. In the No-Face Zombie Chase case, the No-Face zombie breaks into the rare coin shop and steals the Golden Galleon, but it's revealed that this is nothing more than a robot, as Mr. Dilly was the mastermind behind it all, in the gorilla costume. But I'm still leaving him on the hook for it all, plus the assaults, animal abuse, kidnapping, and evading police, sending this zombie to the Walking Dead's prison for the next 30 years. In Mamba Wamba and the Voodoo Hoodoo, Roger dresses up as Mamba Wamba in order to steal the rights to the famous band's song, with the help of Lila. Together, they kidnap the rest of the band and keep them tied up, and once Shag and Scoob find them, chase them down and fight for the contract. Hopefully the duo learned how to play Jailhouse Rock, but even if they didn't, they'll have the next 42 years to do so. In A Frightened Town Meets Demons Underground, Mr. Crenshaw uses the Legend of Seattle's old demons in order to steal the underground treasure, scaring his workers along the way. When the gang get involved, he takes a swipe at Shaggy, before just grabbing Daphne and keeping her tied up in this old-timey piano. While it seems fitting to give him 666 years, realistically I can only sentence him to 20 years in Washington prison. In A Bum Steer for Scooby, Sam Farron and his ranchers dress up as a medicine man and a talking bull, in order to steal Daphne's uncle's cattle from his farm. By my count, 38 in total. They cut his barbed wire fence down, before chasing the gang down and trying to trap them, eventually succeeding by herding Shaggy and Scooby into the truck. By the end, Daphne's uncle reveals he was assaulted by one of their lassos, adding one final charge onto the rap sheet, bringing the total up to 126 years in Texas State Prison. In There's a Demon Shark in the Foggy Dark, Mr. Wells disguises as the Demon Shark in order to smuggle $2 million of stolen pearls to Florida via frozen oysters. And when the gang gets a little too close to solving the mystery, he chases them around the aquarium, netting him a total of 27 years behind bars. In Scooby-Doo Where's the Crew, Professor Poison's crew abandoned ship, only to return as these ghostly goofballs, looking for the shipwrecked treasure below. To keep their operation afloat, they try and chase away the gang and the professor, but when that fails, just resort to kidnapping them, keeping them tied up next to their hall. And I'm throwing them all in the brig for the next 22 years. In The Ghost That Sacked the Quarterback, Buck Bender poses as the scoreboard operator, posing as the rambling ghost, kidnapping 2 of the players to get back at the team for firing them. He keeps them locked away, where Shaggy and Velma soon find themselves. On top of that, in his chase with Shaggy and Scooby, also runs into 5 other players, and then uses the whirlpool to fling Shaggy and Scooby out of this window from at least 3 stars up. Given the NFL's bizarre leniency with violence, he won't be banned from the league. But he is getting a 15-yard penalty for unnecessary roughness, and a life sentence plus 41 years. In The Ghost of the Bad Humor Man, the Neapolitan Technicolor ghosts hide a stolen arm truck with $2 million in the ice cream factory, repainting it to look like an ice cream truck. When the gang nearly ruin their scheme, they chase them away, locking them in the freezers, resulting in a cool 17-year sentence. In the Season 1 finale, The Spirits of 76, Mr. Clive and Mr. Willett break into the US Mint in order to produce tons of US currency. To do so, they dress up as revolutionary figures in the Wax Museum, but when Scooby gets a little too nosy, kick him away. When the gang go find him, they instead find themselves trapped too, bringing our bicentennial bandit sentence up to 53 years. Before we continue with the crimes of Scooby-Doo, I want to take a minute to talk about some real-life crimes, and how today's sponsor Surfshark can help protect you. Whether you casually browse the internet, or more likely are as terminally online as I am, there are countless people out there trying to take your personal information, leaving you helpless to the ramifications. But with Surfshark VPN, you can browse as you please, and not have to worry about that. With over 3,200 servers in 100 different countries, you can pretend to be from wherever you like, while keeping your actual residence hidden. And as a bonus to that, appearing in a different country allows you to watch region-locked movies and television shows. Want to watch Scooby-Doo on Netflix in the US? Well, that's too bad. But now I'm in the UK, and the mystery gang's coming with me. If this sounds interesting to you, you can use my link in the description, and they'll give you an extra 4 months on top of your order for free. And even if it's not for you, no worries, since you get a 30-day money-back guarantee. Thank you once again to Surfshark. Now let's get back to the program. In the Season 2 premiere, The Curse of Viking Lake, the museum curator and 2 geologists use Viking disguises to scare away people from their underground uranium mining operation. For some reason, that means Velma's Uncle John gets kidnapped and held captive in this cage, and as the gang try and save him, the Vikings chase them around the caves, trapping Fred and the girls, while Shaggy and Scooby have their hands full with the others. So I sentenced these 3 to become Minnesota Vikings fans for the next 25 years. That's too bad. In Vampire Bats and Scaredy Cats, Lisa's Uncle Leon tries to convince her that she's been turned into a vampire, so she'd be sent to a mental institution, and unable to take over the hotel, which is heinous in itself. But adding on the assaults of Daphne and Shaggy, plus animal abuse for Scooby-Dum, Leon will be spending the next 11 years in a prison cell coffin. In Hang In There, Scooby-Doo, Johnny the Sandwich Guy runs an illegal music distribution business, pirating hit songs off the radio and selling the cassettes and records. To do so, he disguises as a pterodactyl, hiding out in this cave system. When the gang are on the case, he chases them away, thrashing at them. This doesn't fly on my watch, so he'll be getting 18 years in prison. Also, the hotel manager was in on the whole thing too, adding on a very quick evading police and resisting charge, totaling 20 years for him as well. In the Chiller Diller movie Thriller, Detective Jim Moss poses as the ghost of Milo Booth, to shut down a movie production with Scooby-Doo, so he can create his own. He attacks the conductor and hijacks the train the gang are on, leading to Scooby-Doo's capture. In the chase, he turns on this machine which sends them for a tumble, later locking them in a mausoleum. This faux phantom will be getting 64 years in Alabama State Prison. In the spooky case of the Grand Prix race, Ken Rogers dresses up as the Phantom Racer to kidnap racers and steal their cars to repaint and sell them off. Shaggy and Scooby get snatched up and put into a car the Phantom rolls down the mountain. Shaggy really can't catch a break in this one, as he gets kidnapped and sealed behind a brick wall too, as the Phantom chases Velma and Scooby. This racer is going to get a lifetime ban, a life sentence plus 38 years, and eventually a video on him by Josh Revell. In the Ozark Witch Snitch, Aggie Wilkins dresses up as Witch McCoy in order to find the buried money her boyfriend robbed from a bank. In doing so, she breaks in and kidnaps the Hatfields, keeping them tied up at the old sawmill. As Shaggy, Velma, and Scooby are hot on her trail, her boyfriend the zombie pushes them off a log into the ravine, which 100% would have killed them. But they aren't safe for long, as they're captured and nearly turned into Scooby-Doo on the other side. And Aggie will get 66 years for her crimes, while the zombie tacks onto his current prison sentence, adding a couple life sentences plus another 9 years. In Creepy Cruise, the Mad Professor and Simon Grady use a time machine and a futuristic bug monster to scam investors out of their money. But when the gang interrupt their scheme, chase Daphne and Shaggy around the ship. Eventually, Shaggy and Scooby get snatched up by the monster, adding another charge onto their totals, giving them 12 years in prison. These futuristic fools don't have much of a bright future ahead of them. In The Creepy Heap from the Deep, Captain Clements runs a criminal makeover parlor out of an old submarine, helping this wanted bank robber escape capture. But as the sea monster, he adds quite a bit more on, assaulting Shaggy and Scooby before eventually locking the gang in the submarine with the water rising. Taking critiques on how I handled a similar situation before, this time he's getting attempted murder for this stunt. Captain Clements is on the hook for vandalizing the mystery machine, harboring a fugitive, and aiding and abetting. He's getting 23 years, while the escaped convict will get 4 life sentences plus another 52 years on top. In Watch Out, the Willowa, Gray Fox pilots the Willowa, as 2 fellow tribesmen don the Owlman costumes, to try and scare away people getting close to uncovering their rare goods smuggling operation. Velma's uncle comes the closest before the gang, so they snatched him up and kept him locked away, so that they could get across the border. But when the gang intervene, they chase them down, eventually leading to the attack on Shaggy and Scooby. The tribe's chief said that they'll take them down to the tribe's elders for proper punishment, which by my count should be about 42 years in prison, or whatever equivalent they deem suitable. In a creepy tangle in the Bermuda Triangle, the head of the weather base, Mr. Grimsley, and some of his henchmen dress up as these skeleton guys to steal and resell planes on Diablo Island. They kidnapped a total of 4 pilots from 2 planes, and when adding the menacing charge for Shaggy's chase on top, total 51 years in prison. In A Scary Night with the Snow Beast Fright, Jean-Baptiste controls the Snow Beast in order to smuggle oil out of the North Pole. In doing so, he attacks and kidnaps Professor Kruger and Chief Manook, keeping them locked up in a cave. Add that to the various igloos destroyed on native land, and the assault on the entire gang, Jean-Baptiste is going to be on the naughty list for the rest of his life, plus another 160 years. In To Switch a Witch, Arlene Wilcox's twin sister, sorry, they never gave her a name, tries to frame Arlene as being a witch in order to steal her inheritance from her, hiring Gar Mooney to help her. Her glowing costume leaks some battery acid, ruining the floors of her house, so that's another charge right there. Look, I'm grasping for straws here. The pair survived the witch trials, but will reside in a Salem prison for 33 years. In The Tar Monster, Stoner goes AWOL on his archaeological team in order to steal the treasure from the underground city of Byzantius, using the legend of the Tar Monster to do so. He scares away 3 of the members, destroying part of their campsite. As Shaggy and Scooby are sleeping, he walks into the tent and drives them out. And does breaking and entering count if it's a tent? Sure, why not? This Turkish tar monster's tantrum totals 24 years in Turkish prison. In A Highland Fling with a Monstrous Thing, Jamie Craigmore dresses up as the ghost of Finian Macduff, scaring away the tourists of Macduff Castle, so he can continue to smuggle and sell Swiss watches out of the castle. Shaggy basically gets tunneled this entire episode, getting sent down the trapdoor with Scooby, and eventually being locked in the basement. The Bagpipe Bandit is going to receive a life sentence plus 21 years of time in Scottish prison. In The Creepy Case of Old Ironface, Mama Mione uses the legend of Old Ironface to smuggle prisoners off Skull Island and scare away anyone getting close to her operation. Captain Morgan unfortunately gets the worst of it, getting kidnapped and held captive in the underground mansion. When the gang come for a rescue mission, they are soon chased and attacked by the Ferris foe. Good thing we're already at prison, saving Mama Mione a trip, and she'll stay here for the next 29 years. In Jeepers, it's the Jaguaro. Barney dresses up as the Brazilian legend of the Jaguaro in order to further his efforts of his diamond smuggling operation. He scares off 3 of the native tribesmen getting too close, and soon after Shaggy and Scooby too, trying to sink them in the Amazon with all the river monsters. He destroys the plane that brought the gang here, kidnapping the pilots and keeping them tied up, but one of them happens to be in on the whole thing. One last assault of Shaggy results in a 51-year sentence in Brazilian prison for Barney. In Make a Beeline Away from That Feline, Dr. Bell dresses up as the cat creature in order to steal rare jewels from shops around New York, planting the stolen goods on Daphne's Aunt Olivia, who's under a hypnotic spell. We see him wreck the Bixby jeweler's shop, and as the gang follow the breadcrumbs, scare Shaggy, eventually thrashing at him, taking some of his shirt with him. Our cat burglar here will receive 18 years in prison, which is like 88 in cat years. In The Creepy Creature of Vulture's Claw, Professor Greer dresses up as this 7-foot-tall praying mantis in order to scare people away from the botanical gardens while he finalizes the deal to purchase it after finding oil reserves underneath. Once the gang threaten to ruin that deal, he takes action by trying to scare them off, sending Shaggy and Scooby down the chute into the alligator pit and kidnapping Daphne, keeping her locked up in the shed. This praying mantis should be praying that he sees freedom again, but that's unlikely with a life sentence plus 27 years on top. In The Diabolical Disc Demon, Ace Decade steals a bunch of records from his uncle's company, smuggling them out in garbage cans. But he decided to turn up the operation, kidnapping Tony Signs and keeping him locked up in the supply closet, so he could steal the sheet music directly. But when the gang beat him to it, he chases them around and grabs at Shaggy, netting him a final charge to his total of 20 years of jailhouse rock. In Scooby's Chinese Fortune Caper, Kim's Uncle Chin uses the legend of the Moon Monster to try and steal the fortune away from his nephew. Unfortunately, Shaggy and Scooby got the brunt of his attention, as he scared them silly and took a swipe at them during the chase. But that is enough to land him a 22-year sentence in Chinese prison. In A Menace in Venice, Mario disguises as the ghostly gondolier in order to try and steal the Malvolio treasure, and escape via the Venetian canals. And get ready because he's racked up a lot of charges, like the assault of Shaggy and animal abuse of Scooby, eventually leading him to try and sink their boat in the sea, which will leave him on the hook for the attempted murder of Fred, Shaggy, and Velma. You might notice that Daphne was omitted from that list, and that's because she was kidnapped and held captive with their friend Antonio. A little bit of property damage on top, and Mario is looking at 3 life sentences plus 55 years in Italian prison. Mamma mia. In Don't Go Near the Fortress of Fear, Captain Eddie dons the disguise of the ghost of Juan Carlos, an old Spanish conquistador, to smuggle stolen items from the museum out of the country. Shaggy and Scooby are like the natives from Juan Carlos's time, in that the conquistador tries to kill them, and almost succeeds too. In the final chase, he manages to trap Daphne, Fred, Velma, and Inspector Armendez in the 3rd story dungeon, before eventually getting captured. And he's actually taken away, where we can expect a 143-year sentence in Puerto Rican prison. In The Warlock of Wimbledon, Nick and John dress up as the Warlock of Anthos, using the legend to try and scare Jimmy from winning Wimbledon. If they were to succeed, then Jimmy would lose the house, and the 2 brothers would have control. Luckily, the gang won't allow that to happen, as they go through the typical recipe of chases and clues to unmask the perpetrators. Throughout the episode, we saw the Warlocks throw a staff at Jimmy, and destroy the gatekeeper's house on the property, which adds a couple more charges onto their tab, resulting in a life sentence plus 25 years for the pair. In the series finale, The Beast is Awake at Bottomless Lake, Julie Johnson dresses up as the Beast, in order to scare people away from her stolen gold smuggling ring. This includes Shaggy and Scooby, who more or less stumble across the monster throughout, who attacks them and their surroundings, leading to a total of 50 years in prison. And that finally completes this edition of the Legal Analysis. Much like Scooby-Doo Where Are You?, these were largely tame, more grounded sentences, which is kinda nice. Not everyone needs a life sentence. Of course, a big shout out to the patrons. Their names are going to be on the screen right now. If you want to see the videos a couple weeks ahead of time and get your name on here with them, then go ahead and head on over to the Patreon. The link's in the description or in the card above. But of course, you never have to give me money. I always appreciate y'all for watching these silly videos. The support is always nice to see. And of course, I'll be in the comments to chat about this group of goofballs. Next up, I think I've got everyone's favorite, Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, which had just 1 season. But before we get into that one, thank you for watching.